Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. We are in the second week of Dark DescentBer, and we are talking about, this time, No One Can Hear You Scream. Or kind of simulating that isolation and helplessness in a game to make it more visceral for your players, more real kind of feeling for your players, so that they can experience just a little bit of the heebie-jeebies along with their characters. So that's what we're talking about this time. Before we get into that, let's go ahead and do announcements. We'll do me, and then Skrat, and then Dan. So I am Adam L. Spain with the Inn of Planar Crossroads, and we should be doing our Mondays live at 11s as usual. I don't think there's any hiccups there so far. We'll see. And I'm open to ideas and discussions on what you guys would like to see on those lives at 11. So let me know that too. We are currently, let me see, December? Don't really have many announcements for December, so just keep an eye on those. We'll be starting up some new ideas and doing discussion about the ideas for the next set of themings, which will start in March. So if you have ideas for a month theme that you would like to see, go ahead and put that in the comments section below too, or reach out to me with it, because we're open to doing those as long as we know what people are looking for. So there you go. That's what I've got. So now I'll allow Skrat to go.
That's me, Skrat from Squirrel Plays. I'm over on YouTube, still trying to figure out what to do with my life, not to be confused with trying to figure out what to do with my channel. Two different things. For the most part, I am a video essay style of channel, talking about the mechanics of storytelling, like character and world building, but I also talk about the mechanics of TTRPGs as well, both in the storytelling sense and actual gameplay mechanics, as I explore and discover new TTRPGs. And I think Tri-Cube Tales is next up on my list. Was originally meant for 5-year-olds, so I think I can handle this one. I got some confidence in my ability to handle that, so we'll see. And that's all I got.
We believe in you, Skrat.
Yeah,
indeed. That's awesome. I guess that's us, Dan and Kristen, Avenue Studios. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Of course, Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, we have our AfterQuest game. We'll be coming to the end of our Nobles campaign. Then we'll be taking a little break for some babies being born and do some other cool... We're going to be trying out some new live stream ideas to see how they catch on. So stay tuned for that. We live stream on Rumble and then upload to YouTube afterwards. And then, of course, for the theme collaboration, Thursdays, 7 p.m. Eastern, we stream on Rumble. We build a one-shot and then play it, usually, but for Dark DescentBer, we have 2 games going on. One run by Alex from AfterQuest, and then the second one at the end of the month, December 28th, we will have Dennis from OKSDM running us in a horror game in his system, Sagas. And we'll have a bunch of guests, DM Tales, MinMax Podcast, and Inn of Planar Crossroads in that game. So I'm really looking forward to that big collaboration there. And I hope you guys can join us for that. And we have some cool stuff coming up by about March when we start over a new series there. We're going to be making some shifts in our channel, so stay tuned for that. We've got some really cool stuff in the works that I hope everyone's going to really enjoy, including, spoilers, some kind of West March Discord-wide game that will begin. So I'm very excited.
All right. We'll have to see how that goes.
Indeed.
He might be remaking his world after the players make decisions in Bomb Squad. You never know.
If it's still there.
We're coming to the apocalypse, and then we'll see what happens. They already have plans for how to blow up the whole world, so back
Solid.
up in case everything goes bad.
In case everything goes bad. In case we can't stop the bad guy from nuking all reality, we're going to nuke all reality?
Yeah. They can't let him have all the glory.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I guess that's our announcements done, which means we are on to Levi's shout-out. We are carrying on his namesake, even though he can't be here tonight. So, it is one that I picked, and like I said last time, I think Skrat said it wasn't him. So I think it was a DM Tales video that helped me find this one. It is Wiz and Pippi, excuse me, Adventures. So it has this black mage looking character with an Hamtaro looking hamster. So Wiz and Pippi, and they go through and talk about games, lore, and GM guides for different things. They mainly focus on they have focused on 5e a little bit. Well, I can't say that. They've focused on D&D setting stuff. So like Forgotten Realms and stuff like that type of setting stuff so far. But I believe they did another one that wasn't that, if I remember right. But I can't see it right now. But there is that if you want to check it out. They've got a nice little aesthetic going on, so check them out and explore RPGs with them. So that's what I have for that as far as our shout out. Cool. They are at 92 subs right now. On there. Yeah. They are 92 subs right now, so we want to get them up to let's get them up to 200 if we can. That would be good.
Sweet. So, subscribed. Yeah. 93.
There we go. All right. And tell them that the End of Planar Crossroads sent you, because then maybe they'll kind of pop in on one of these sometimes. That's happened. Gelatinous Rube we're trying to get Gelatinous Rube on here. But scheduling, the bane of every TTRPG gamer's existence. So, there's that. All right. So, our announcements are done. Our shout-out is done. That means it's time to grab your preferred beverage and pull up a chair with us around the hearth and join us as we discuss how no one can hear you scream. Skål. Oh. All right. I'm not sure if that's actually something to toast to, but we did. Ooh.
We toast to good stories.
Yes. There we go. There's a squirrel backpacking around. That's got to be one of your next Mouse Ritter characters.
I like that one a lot.
Yeah.
Looks so tired.
He does.
Tired and worn out.
Yeah.
All alone.
Yeah.
Because nobody could hear him go, "Ree."
He got it in.
Well, I mean, a squirrel might actually go, "Ree." So.
That's fair.
All right. Well, let's start off like we normally do with some of our key points and ideas to help get the creative juices flowing. A good video to look at for isolation as far as incorporating it into a game, so simulating it for the characters so that the players can kind of get some of that visceral adrenaline rush that we get when we get spooked and scared or surprised. You look at the Alien movie, does it really good, the first one, where things start to happen and a lot of that, the alien just feels so unstoppable. So that's something interesting you can add in there and take tips from that. And this is useful to look at for different ways of implementing that idea of helplessness, even though they're not the players and the characters aren't actually helpless because they have abilities, they have strengths, and they have weaknesses. They're not actually helpless, so you're more simulating that's there. You're more making it seem that way so that they can overcome it. In the sci-fi realm, like with this Alien movie, out in space, like the tagline for that movie was, in space, no one can hear you scream. There's no one coming to rescue you. No one's close enough to come and rescue you. You are on your own. And that isolation in that sense can be very unsettling. And that's kind of what that's the kind of feeling that you're wanting to simulate. That unsettled nature can come from being lost too far away. And I think you can even do something where, even in a modern setting, you can have this, because, especially if you got a bunch of city folk, because, no offense to you city folk, but if you're driving down the road out in one of these reserves or something like that, and you're out driving in the woods and you lose connection with your cell phone and you got a flat tire and no spare, now you got to walk through the woods. You and your buddies are out on this camping trip or something like that, or cabin in the woods type of thing.
Those are cloudy night.
Yeah. Cloudy night or a new moon.
It's dark.
Yeah. So that can start to creep up your spine a little bit, which is what you want in this type of a game. So that loss of tech, you don't even have to take away their cell phone. You just say you don't have towers here. All of a sudden, this thing we put so much emphasis on as being so good and so cool or something like that. All of a sudden, it's useless now to contact anybody. You're hours from a walk from anywhere, especially if you're vacationing in Canada or something like that in the story. So there you go. Something like Westerns work well for this too. You got that so far from home, so far from help type of situation. Again, I'll shout out that story by Algernon Blackwood, The Wendigo. Pretty freaky. Let me see. Oh, one more thing I wanted to put down into our consciousness while we're talking about this. Pick them off one by one. It'll be effective. All right. So, what points do you gents want to bring in? And lady.
I actually had a question about what you guys think about how many players to have for this kind of game, because I feel like it lends itself more to only a couple people to really make it suspenseful. I don't know, because I mean, if you had a large group, you could start picking them off and stuff, and then it gets suspenseful that way. But I feel like it would be more fun with only like 2 players, maybe, for this kind of setting.
It does have its advantages having fewer players when you're doing a spooky one like this.
'Cause people need to buy into the story too. Because if you have one person that's like playing it off like it's fine, it's taking everybody else out of the headspace. So the less people you have, the more you can stay in the headspace together.
Statistically, lower your chance of that guy.
Well, some players aren't all that interested in really putting their headspace in there enough to feel what their characters are feeling, and some people are just naturally not into that. So, like Zachariah and Austin and even Ryan and stuff like that, they'd buy in, they'd go for it. David's so happy-go-lucky, I don't know if he'd have a lot of fun in a spooky one like that. Because, because David's just so happy.
He also has talking to player side, he has a gamer type of playstyle that there is a right way to do it. That's how I've noticed he approaches it. More of a story-driven video game style, which is his background in gaming. So I think there's ways you can do it where this is more general GMing, but looking at what your players find interesting and trying to get them on the same page. Because for someone like that, maybe it's more of a gaming sense of possibly the puzzle that they're trying to solve is what keeps them in, even though they as a player don't feel that isolation if they're trying to solve this puzzle, this mystery of why they're so isolated. But I do agree, in a sense, simulating that is a meta way, keeping the party small, keeping it intimate. It is a nice meta way to add to that.
Well, to go back to like our Cabin in the Woods example, if you look at those movies, they have like 5 people and that's it, and people start to get picked off. And so as long as everybody's on board with that, you can kind of have that. Even with the buddy system, what if there's one person odd out? I mean, 5 is usually a number picked on purpose for our games, because usually if you're having your players vote, there needs to be a tiebreaker vote, and that's why you pick an odd number. But what happens when the odd number works against you? What happens when there's one person who doesn't have a buddy? And then all of a sudden, that one person creak. But they're there alone in the cabin. See, the isolation comes directly to the character instead of the whole situation now. Because other people are buddied. But the isolation, the aloneness, still comes to that one character in the dark cabin. Because the winter storm has knocked out the power. And they hear the of an open door. But they're there alone. Why is the door open? They didn't open. Nobody left it open. It was locked. Wasn't it? You close it. You just close it. Or do they not? Do they run out after someone, anyone? Then they're outside, alone. So, you can start to play with it. You get too many, of course, and you're going to have everybody buddied up, or, it's going to be harder to work that in. But I think anywhere from 5, 3's good, 2 as well. So I wouldn't get much bigger than 5, because then, again, if there's 6, everybody has a buddy. If there's 7, that's a lot of people to whittle out in a single... Like, if it's a one-shot, it's a lot of people to whittle out in a one-shot. If it's a sum-shot, that means that 7 people, you're going to have 7... You're either going to have to kill off a lot at one time, or they're going to have some way to solve this that's going to have to involve 7 people. So there's a lot to consider. But I think 5 all the way down to 2 is a good way to do it. You could even do a one-on-one, but the player's controlling more than one. That could be useful. That could be good too, to just have a nice, fun experience.
That's fun. I was thinking outside the box, rather than necessarily killing them, is looking at other options within the system you're playing to take them out. Incapacitation, fatigue stuff. Even I'm thinking open legend terms like the Deafen Bane and the Silence Bane, getting struck with those. Or even movement, if the horror monster can move them, teleport them different places in some way or shape, so that they keep getting forced to be apart, to create that so it's not actually attacking them, but they keep getting separated. Or taking an alien type of idea and targeting less typical defenses. This doesn't work as well in like Dungeons and Dragons, but if you look at some other systems, like I always go to Open Legend because I enjoy it. Toughness and resolve. Usually people leave that as their dump defense, one of those. So having monsters that attack that instead, and have it not necessarily taking them out completely, but in some way incapacitating them. So you're having to rotate and everyone's having to wake someone back up they're down again, or now I'm all alone because this person just passed out. I don't know why they're unconscious on the floor all of a sudden, or they were right behind me and now they're gone because the monster has movement, can move people to and fro.
Mm-hmm.
Keep them guessing.
What do you think, Skrat?
Super Metroid. That's what I think.
Oh.
That is my absolute favorite when it comes to this kind of thing. So I wouldn't say I'm particularly good at writing or running this kind of thing, but as a consumer, I absolutely love this genre, which is kind of odd considering how much I dislike regular horror stuff. But no, when Super Metroid came out and I played that, I guess I was like 8 or 9 years old. It spooked the crap out of me, but I couldn't put it down. I loved it. So like that was Nintendo's first time putting a dead human body on screen. That was their first time they ever did that, and it was the absolute first thing you saw. Like you turned the game on, dead body, there it was, and it just sets the tone, and it has that super creepy music that's doing through the whole intro, and
Yes.
when you start the game, there's no music. Like when you actually start your file and stuff and start the adventure, there's no music. You're on that space station and you go back and you run into your nemesis. And this is so great because we've been talking about Alien this episode and last episode. The guy who made Super Metroid, Yoshio Sakamoto, I think is his name. He was super duper inspired by Alien. Like that's... If it wasn't for that movie, the Metroid series wouldn't exist. Like, that's what drove it. So your nemesis in that game is Ridley. Like, that's why his name is that. But anyway, you find him, and then when you're thrown down to the planet to start your main adventure, there's still no music. It's completely empty. It's just raining. There's the thunder in the background. That's it. And you go for about 5 minutes or so trying to figure out where the heck to go. And you get your first item, that's when monsters finally start appearing. But even then, like, they're kind of sparse and few and far between. And at the same time, you have all the things you need to survive. So it's not like the Resident Evil kind of thing. It's like, all right, I got to make sure I have enough bullets, or, I have a limited number of saves and that kind of stuff. No, you have unlimited everything, but it still manages to be spooky. Because the music and the way the levels are and the monsters you come across themselves are kind of creepy, and you never know what's coming next. And then when you get to the end, you finally find, right before you find the giant Metroid, you find the husks of everything. It is drained completely dry. And when you touch them, they just fall to dust. And it's like, what's going to happen? It's pretty great. I loved it. It has been, I guess you can say, inspiration. I have taken a lot of things from it and used it in TTRPGs. So, especially Tales. I think Baron Derop is his name, the other YouTuber. He had a video and he used Super Metroid as an example for good tells for your players to drop them little hints and stuff. It's a spooky game. I'm sure it wouldn't spook anybody now because it's just a 16-bit game. But back then,
Yep.
It did a real good job of letting you know, hey, you're the only one here. You got no help. So,
well, what I'm hearing is that Skrat wants to play a Metroid-themed squirrel game. Where they fire, I don't know, nuts, or have to collect the cyber nuts to be able to...
No, they're taking all the acorns is what they're doing.
Oh.
So we're going to show up one day and just all the acorns are gone and the trees are dead. It's like, oh no.
Oh.
Now they've got to save the forest.
Yeah.
That is interesting, though, the setting, because it reminds me of later game, like Dead Space, the first one. Has very much an isolation feel too, and like you were saying with Metroid Prime, it's the setting, hitting those husks, having collapse, and with Dead Space, it's much more gory horror.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I'm glad you brought that up. So I didn't play Dead Space. I watched somebody I was dating at the time. They played that game and loved it. And I watched them play it. And I was like, yeah, this is just needlessly gory for me.
Oh,
the baby crawling on the ceiling, yeah, that's really cool, but not for me. But yeah, it's crazy because like Metroid didn't have any of that gore factor, but what to me was still spooky. Like I was scared to go across these other doorways and scene transition. But I don't know. Have you ever played Super Metroid?
I have not, though. My brother he loves the Metroid stuff, so I know as you experienced Dead Space, I have experienced Metroid.
Yeah. So that one boss, I think his name is just Croc or whatever, the red one.
Yes.
Where you push him off into the acid and like you just see his skin melting and everything. It's like, holy crap, Nintendo, calm down. And then a skeleton comes out and jumps at you. It's like, all right. Yep.
I think it's a bit what we're talking about is for setting the tone in describing locations, because Adam's play with the door creaking and stuff, that getting you that feel that you're alone in the space.
Or you're not alone.
Well, yeah.
You don't know.
Fair enough. You should be. It seems you're alone.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the closest I've ever come to that, doing that, was, and I think I brought this up in another episode, there was the first campaign, a dungeon they were in. It was in 3 sections. There's 3 mini bosses, one at each end. There's like a fire section, a nature section, and a water section. And in the water one, they couldn't tell what was in the water, and they're having to go through these different sections. It's like, all right, it's kind of like a Zelda thing, raise the water, lower the water. Whenever the water was up, there was something in it. But there were times where they had to, cross the water. And what it was like I said, all the characters' backstories were intertwined. So this is one character's backstory. It was his siblings, and they were all rat folk. So in the water, there was this, and they're, people-sized rats, right? So this rat had blades tied to her tail, like all these different blades attached to it, and they couldn't see her in the water for magical reasons, but that tail is what was wrapping around them and cutting them up. So they had all kinds of theories what was in the water, and wasn't a single one of them right. But they got to fight her, in her boss room or whatever. Of course, there was water, and then when they went back to the main part of the dungeon, they had to fight all 3 of them, and they're like, oh, this is going to be easy because she doesn't have any water. And she dives right into the solid ground, and it ripples like it's water. Bloop. And she goes in. So they're like, oh, okay. But they were kind of spooked through that whole water thing, but they really liked it. But there was a lot of, I'm not getting in that water, man. It's your turn to get across.
That's awesome. Water can be a great one.
Yeah. I'm terrified of the water, man. I'm terrified of what's in the water.
Yes. The idea of boats, setting on a boat or a ship, too, could really get that sense of isolation. In the middle of the ocean.
What is it called when the boat's stuck out in the... It's
adrift.
Adrift, yeah.
Yeah. Ryan has that. I don't want to spoil it too much, but Ryan has this great idea for you're on a cruise ship and you wake up in the middle of the night and it's completely empty.
Yeah.
It's a huge cruise ship. He wants to make a whole game out of it, but
that could go very much like The Shining. You get to the bar and there's this bartender. He says, "Hi," we'll just use Ryan's name. "Ryan, come on, sit down. I got your usual," right? Acts like nothing's changed. Nothing's different. "What you mean? You've always been here." Those type of things. Messing with perceptions.
Yeah, I've been on this boat 5 years. What you talking about?
When you guys were talking about sound earlier, I was like, we're talking about using music for ambience, but the idea, going back to our other chat with the false Hydra thing, the lack of sound can be just as effective.
Mm-hmm.
So having no music, or going along with the Metroid idea, there was no background music until certain points. And so you got this really interesting thing you can do that isn't always thought about when you're looking at your games. Take a moment and say, will they be... Because if you usually use background music and there is none, especially in like I'll use our game that we ran for Augustine Illusions as an example. That had some background music, but there was one particular thing that, for copyright reasons, I had to sing. But every time something supernatural was happening, that was playing. And we went through the entire song eventually by the end. And now, 'cause the night has 1,000 eyes. And you can mess with it and play with the perceptions of it. And going back to the cabin example, if you're in the cabin and there's no electricity, and then all of a sudden, I fall to pieces, starts to come on.
Older music always does it for horror,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
I got to give credit where it's due. That one's from a different game, a different movie, where there was this thing that was wiping out an entire town, and then this group went in to figure it out, and that was a thing that played whenever that was a thing that played a few times in it. So when something was going on, I don't remember what it was right now, but it was okay. It was okay. Had Brad Pitt in it. Not Brad Pitt. Now I don't know his name. Played Batman. Affleck.
Oh, Christian Bale?
No, it had Ben Affleck.
Oh, Ben Affleck.
But
newer Batman. Gotcha.
Yeah, it had Ben Affleck in it, and it was played up like a infection or something like that. So that's what it was.
Phantoms?
Yes, that's what it was. It's worth a watch to kind of get an idea of that isolated town type of feel. If you want to do that, a town disappearing. And it was pretty good about the horror of it. So you can do that. And we are getting pretty close. I'm trying to keep us closer this time. So we need to do final thoughts. Let's see. I went first last time, so y'all are going to have to go first this time. We will see. Let's do Studio, Skrat, and then me.
Alrighty. I was thinking about just another practical thing you could use in the isolation is rolling dice to select who's getting targeted next. Adding to this a little bit of a chaos factor. Who's going to get pulled away, or who's going to get hit next, especially if you're doing Mindbender stuff. Mm-hmm. And doing that right out in the open, like you're 1, you're 2, you're 3, you're 4. Let's see who's up. Who are we going to next? Or if they're separated, that's how you're picking where things are going.
They each have different objectives they have to do at the same time, type of thing.
Yep. And then just letting the dice decide where you jump to or who's getting targeted, and creating that suspense every time. You're like, all right, roll that dice. And maybe pairing it. I love the idea of you had with the music. Whenever that some kind of audio trigger plays, they know what's happening. It's like, audio trigger plays. All right, guys. Who's getting a scary dream this time? Let's find out. So that you get that awesome, every time the music plays, it's like, ah. I love those moments. But yeah,
It starts. You roll, and then Skrat gets it, and it's like, all right, Skrat's dream. He's a little squirrel out in a rowboat in a dark ocean, this dark sky. The waves are starting to move back and forth, and something disturbs the water. Poor little squirrel.
The catfish in the water.
It's a big catfish, gigantic catfish. There's catfish big enough to eat people. So I'm not so sure that's a irrational fear or anything.
Doesn't have to be irrational, right?
Ultimately, it comes down to you have a loss of control over your circumstances and everything. So, yeah. So your characters just feel like their car breaks down. They have nothing to help them out. You know, you're on a ship. You have nothing to help you out. You're out. You don't have control of the situation. So that's what adds to your anxiety of not being in control. So.
Yep, that's good. We humans don't like that. And we have so little control over things. We still don't like it.
We like to think we have a lot.
Yeah.
All right. What you got, Skrat?
I'll just bounce off more of the music stuff. So y'all play in person, I'm assuming, more often than with VTTs, but VTTs are all I ever have used and get to use. So I have learned that at least Foundry, you got a lot of good ambience options. Like you can, obviously you have your regular music control, but at least in Foundry, like you can have sound zones. Like you can set it to where, all right, when a token crosses this threshold, it hears this, and you can have it to where they get closer to the source. It gets louder, things like that. And that's pretty neat. And in both of the campaigns I've run so far, there has been a lot of music stuff I wanted to do, like y'all were talking about, like when they're fighting this certain type of thing, this type of music plays, and then after so many fights, they would hopefully put that together, but it never really panned out because 5e combat is so slow. It would loop 100 friggin' times, and everybody's just tired of hearing it, and it's like, all right, maybe not. Maybe this wasn't the best idea. So... all those ideas got shot down, but it would have been neat.
That's a really cool thing. That's an interesting thing to point out. A problem. Watch out for those combats.
Yeah,
I love your. I still love your combat video, Skrat. That was so good. Where you broke it down versus ECD6.
Oh yeah.
I love that video. That was a great one.
That was good. We'll do more of that. But yeah, there's music is, and this is like. Maybe it's because I like writing. Music is a layer that I don't get. And then when I'm playing tabletops, it's like, hey, now I have this other layer I can use for storytelling. But yeah, if things aren't flowing at a good rate, it doesn't work very well. But still good for spooky stuff in the background when they're exploring and getting near things and they hear something different. That works good.
That proximity sound works really is very effective.
That's the word I'm looking for. Yeah. Proximity.
And I suppose it's arguable, since you're doing a lot of ambience and not a lot of direct music in these type of games, that it's actually easier to use those type of ideas, since there's not a lot of combat, for the combat, for those big moments. That's when the music starts to be there, or something along that line. So,
yeah, the first time I used the proximity thing, it was absolutely not a spooky situation. They were in it was a temple under construction. Goblins were building it, and they were going through a hallway, and there was a secret wall/door in the hallway. So when they walked past the secret door, they'd hear like some rave music on the inside, and then they open the door and there's a bunch of smoke in there and a bunch of goblins. Hey, man!
That's awesome.
come on in. They have to walk through a haze to get in there. They come out feeling really weird.
Yeah.
You know? And seeing all these stuff, man.
I got to play with the light effects in Foundry too for that room. It was pretty great.
There's a lot of like trigger things, you can do with that, which would make a great horror thing. Like, you know, a person puts their token on a certain spot and the whole thing changes, you know, like the whole map, you know, and you're like, what just happened? It could really throw you off.
Mm-hmm.
I like
Foundry's
Foundry.
awesome.
It's a nice tool.
It's our favorite VTT as well.
All right. Well, I guess that leaves me for final thoughts. My final thought is when you're doing this and you're picking them off one by one, you know, it can be a little bit of a bummer to not be able to play. So why not let them play? Why not say that, yes, you have fallen, and then you just hand them a little envelope. And you say, you can open and look at that, but don't tell nobody. And it's a stat block for them. And in a moment, each of them as they're taken, they get one of those. It's a stat block or an idea and concept, so that when the music starts playing or the static comes across on the TV, when something starts happening, it's not the GM that is acting out the main monster all the time anymore. You're stepping up this isolation by saying, not only are your friends gone, but now vestiges of them, or they're being puppeted around by this bigger threat. And so the players start to engage. And this works especially well if the characters have deep connected secrets with each other in this game. Then it doesn't matter if they're gone. And then the rolling of the dice is to see who comes to haunt or to assault the survivors. So turning the dead players into monsters with the GM can be a fun thing to do for a one or a few shots. So there you go.
That's awesome. Nice. That makes the player feel isolated too as you get down to the last one. That's great.
All right. So that's what we've got for this time, travelers. We hope you haven't felt too isolated. We hope you have felt in good company as we discussed how no one can hear you scream in certain situations. But I think that's all for now. So, as always, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
I still haven't seen that one. It's from the
You haven't
70s.
I have failed you. I'm so sorry.
No, but
What kind of husband
Mary-
are you?
I did.
Mary says it's terrifying, so I kind of was like, no, I'm just not going to say
Gollum's pretty solid in that.
Well, the Gollum in that actually is scary. The
Yeah,
Gollum in the
Mary
Peter
hates
Jacksons, because
You
he's
know
got
which Gollum was the scariest though?
which.
The one in the new video game they just made recently.
Oh, yeah, but for totally different reasons.
Yeah.
I haven't watched any gameplay yet of it, but I have heard many
Well,
stories.
you know, that one was so bad, and then they turn around and make that a King Kong one. Have you seen that?
I haven't, but I heard it's everyone's been putting those two together on the
I
same...
thought it was a joke. I thought Gollum was a joke for the longest time, and it's like, oh, this is a $50 game. It's like, oh.
Oh my god.
That's terrible. To charge that much for such a... It wasn't even a good game.
Speaking of cosmic horror.
No.
What is reality?
No, that Gollum from that movie, he actually is dark, like he's described in the book, and he's kind of toad-like he's described in the book. He actually is closer to what the book describes him as, and it's like you could just see that thing sneaking up on you in the middle of the night or something.
Yeah.
It freaked me out. And he's got it's not got
voice
this type of voice either. It's more,
Right.
oh, it's gravelly down here. It says, what's it got in its pockets? Precious.
I don't
It's
know who
different.
that voice actor is. I don't remember.
Precious.
So good.
Kind of croaky.
Good stuff. All right, add it to the movie list.
Yep.
I
And
did
show it
not
to your
realize
kids
you
at the
hadn't seen
same
it.
time so you can
Yep.
traumatize them.
That's
Every
what
kid
we
needs
do.
a little trauma in their, raising and everything.
What
I think
doesn't
it-
mentally break you makes you strong.
Yes. Yep.
All right.
Anyways.
Okay, ready to do No One Can Hear You Scream and talk about isolation simulation in a game?
Got it.
I feel my
Yes,
wife
he had
fixes
something in
me.
his tooth. It was on the very side, so nobody would have seen it.
That was his Yzma spinach moment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. How long has that been there?
What is